Welcome, let me share with you what I've been working on all this time. We may already be familiar with some of these spells, but I will explain for anyone who does not know. Elemental Invocation will store charges of a spell every time we shock, freeze, or ignite an enemy. We will be igniting enemies, so can gain 2 energy each time we do. We use the Invocated Efficiency skill passive to restore mana each time we activate it as well. This is how we sustain mana in the build. All of the meta skills are able to generate energy at the same time, meaning we can equip duplicates, and charge both, at the same speed we would charge one. When casting, we are only able to keep one of the buttons constantly pressed, and the other must be tapped. Or, each can be pressed alternately. The Capacitor support gem is used because it lets us store more charges, and recover more mana from the passive skill. The energy cost is equal to the cast time of the spell, times 100. Adding multiple spells will increase the energy cost, and require us to meet the full price before casting all of them at once. Each time we apply Ignite with Incinerate, we do it as though hitting them. This will be important soon. We will now see fireballs being cast at the same speed, but comets will also rain down. If we had enough spirit, we could charge as many cast on Ignite spirit gems as we like, although we do need to have at least 1 or 2 elemental invocations to keep our mana topped up, or another way of dealing with spell costs, such as blood magic. This is the normal rate for gaining energy when using Incinerate, which is actually hitting the enemy for 0 damage, but igniting them for 20% of the stated value. Now let's see what happens if we interrupt the hit from Incinerate. By hitting with another spell which ignites as though hitting, we can cause multiple spells to hit the enemy at once, but because only the strongest ignite may be active at any time, it is constantly overwriting itself, and reigniting enemies, also generating energy every time. Normally, any spell which is created with a triggered effect cannot generate energy, but we are not generating energy with Flame Wall. The weak damage from Flame Wall hits the monster and ignites them for 1 tick, which is instantly overwritten by our Incinerate spell which also hits the enemy. So, because only the strongest ignite can be active at once, every time Flame Wall hits an enemy, our Incinerate ignite is allowed to reapply itself, and grants us energy each time. So now we have seen how Incinerate works, we can apply all of the same principles to our other skill, Whirling Slash. The first cast of the attack creates an individual entity, which remembers the gems stored in it. When we attack with this skill, and we are already inside a whirlwind, the attack will increase the stages of the existing whirlwind entity, meaning we can place support gems in one Whirling Slash to increase the size when we first cast it, and have other support gems with stat boosts or on-hit effects, which will apply when we attack with the other skill gem. We also pick up any ground effects by attacking near them, and because Incinerate creates ignited ground, we are allowed to pick this effect up and ignite monsters in an AoE around us while dashing. The damage of the ignite will be exactly what it was when we used Incinerate, including any item bonuses, and skill tree weapon swap bonuses, both of which we will cover later on. For now, we only need to know that we need to first cast Incinerate, and use one of our Whirling Slashes to pick up the effect, and then use our second Whirling Slash to attack and move forward. Just like with Incinerate, applying Ignite with our Whirling Slash will generate energy for us, which we will use to cast fireballs and comets. The Whirlwind will also apply a 30% slow to enemies, including a blind, so we don't need the blind support gem, but using the encumbrance support with our big Whirling Slash, which we cast first, will increase the slow of the Whirlwind entity when it first spawns, meaning it will retain this buff even when we use our other skill. We can also place the font supports in the Whirling Slash gem, making it a good source of mana, life, or rage generation for any class. If we want to apply an effect on hit, such as Maim or Culling Strike, this must be placed in our fast Whirling Slash, not the big one with a cooldown. Here, we can see that after using the big Whirling Slash, there is a noticeable cooldown. This is because one of the support gems adds a cooldown, and makes it easy for us to tell which is which. Each time we attack with any Whirling Slash ability, while inside a previously created whirlwind, we will add stages to the current entity that we are in, increasing the size and damage. If we leave the whirlwind, it will collapse and explode, although we are able to run around if we stay inside of it. It's also important to remember to keep the gem at level 1, because we are not scaling our attack damage and will gain little benefit. Instead, we take advantage of the low mana cost from a level 1 gem. The Splinter of Larata applies poison on hit, so we can see that when we use Whirling Slash, we are applying poison on every hit against a T15 boss. This means we have no reason to take accuracy or resolute technique, because we can still land every hit with a 69% hit chance. Even though Whirling Slash is an attack, we don't need to worry about that for applying ground effects. Remember how I was saying that spells like Flame Wall and Incinerate, as well as the ignited ground from Whirling Slash, are hitting? Let's see how much damage our ignited ground does on its own without Flame Wall. Now when we watch the health drain, we can notice when the Flame Wall spawns, our damage is staggered, and is being interrupted by the Flame Wall. Flame Wall hits for 0 damage and applies an ignite, but Flame Wall also interrupts our ignited ground, which reapplies the ground ignite because it's stronger, and generates energy rapidly. This does unfortunately mean that if we use the Flame Wall to reset ignites and generate more energy, we are unable to use the Incinerate ignited ground for damage, and must rely solely on scaling spell damage, as well as any other bonuses we can get our hands on. The Zerphi's Serape armor is perfect for any build which gets close to enemies, and gains up to 45% increased skill speed when an enemy dies in our presence. The presence area of effect can be increased. In simulacrums, we use Gloamgown for its incredible recovery, so long as we keep casting Whirling Slash. We also choose not to use Fireball, as the ricochet support causes a lot of lag. We must also be careful of some rare monsters. We will see a blue aura around them, and we must instantly react by pressing our mana flask, as they will quickly drain all of our mana. If we are able to, moving in circles around the center of the arena can help prevent us getting trapped from enemies spawning on top of us. Because of our weapon swap set, we lose a lot of energy shield when swapping weapons, so in fights like this, we are a one-button build. Only hold Whirling Slash and Elemental Invocation together, otherwise energy barrier will not activate. Gloamgown's recovery is more than enough to keep us alive, and although we are using Flame Wall, which means our ignited ground will not deal full damage, our spells still manage to take out delirious mobs after a short time. One of our biggest bonuses comes from weapon swapping, which effectively gives us an extra 48 skill points to play with. It is truly brilliant. We must make sure our skill gems are set up exactly as it says in the planner. This is because we have different stats on each weapon, as well as different skill points in the tree. Because of this, we must also make sure any attributes we have on one weapon set are matched in the other. The spirit gems will also activate in the list from top to bottom, and this order is also the same when choosing which spell to cast first if low on mana, so whichever spell you want to see more of, place higher up in the list. Sadly, there is no viable fourth option for this build. We could use the Hound, but he has little use. The extra spell damage and mana are at least helpful to us. One of the options for the build is a From Nothing Jewel, and may be one of the most expensive pieces of the build. I have included planners not using these passives, and showcased them at the start of this video. Do not worry if you can't get these points, just copy the rest of the tree. If you can afford it, it makes us really fast in maps and helps us if we get stuck. The anointment is connected to our defensive layer. We are using back in action, because we rely on being stunned to recharge energy shield. This is because of the energy barrier support gem. The rest of our tree focuses solely on energy shield and spell damage. Our weapon set skills do not have to be arranged exactly as shown if you can view it like this. Our normal skill points are used for travel, or getting a damage bonus that both our spells and Incinerate can use. Our weapon set 1 will be active all the time, so we use it for energy shield and specific spell damage increases that Incinerate doesn't benefit from. Weapon set 2 is only for pre-buffing ignited ground, so we'll focus on fire damage and ignite magnitude. Because we take this viewpoint, it makes weapon swapping very dangerous, in the sense that our weapon set 1 points have claimed all the shield nodes, so weapon set 2 does not get any of the shield bonuses. For this reason we must only pre-buff our ignite when it is safe, usually at the start of the map. When playing, it is important to keep an eye on our mana, and use our flask to restore it. If we don't have enough mana to cast a spell, we can't cast it, any energy we generate will be wasted. It's also hard to move, as we do not run as usual, but move with Whirling Slash, and sometimes we can get stuck on rocks or logs, walls and doorways, but with more time spent on the build, it does become easier to control. We may also sometimes have problems getting our spells to activate even though we are stood next to the enemy. In this case, we have to move our Whirlwind away from the monster, so they are not inside, and then charge back in to reignite them and start the flame wall loop. The single target damage was very hard to scale with this particular build, because all the damage from our Incinerate and Ignited Ground gets reduced by Flame Wall to increase our trigger rate, so our comet damage is the main source for bosses. Whichever version of the build we use, we need to pre-buff all the same. This version is using Soul Offering and Sigil of Power to boost Incinerate, as well as the Seething Body Ascendancy skill from Infernalist. We also are using the Bringer of Flame to Ascendancy to allow all damage which is gained as extra to apply to Ignite. We get our biggest bonus from Ming's, and use Blackflame to force the enemy to take our damage as Chaos, affecting their Chaos resistance. For Pinnacles, we must swap our gear like this for the damage bonus. But, as shown before, in maps we are able to set off without any item or gem changes. After fully charging and using all of our spells, we managed to reach 193,000 damage on Incinerate. With our Blackflame Ring and Wither, Saitha's Spear and Shock, we massively boost our damage, including our gained as extra damage. Because of our Infernal Flame, we must also socket fire resistance into all of our pre-buff items, so that when our Infernal Flame fills, we do not incinerate ourselves. This is how we can reduce the damage we deal with flame. You may have noticed, it is important to walk around the sides of the boss in order to apply shock ground. With our Voltaic Mark, and some increased magnitude on duels, we achieved a 42% shock. If you do not like Infernal Flame because of the self-damage, we can actually achieve higher damage without the Seething Body Ascendancy, because Mana Tempest gives significantly more gained as extra damage, which we scale with increased spell damage on the tree. The first stat we should consider is our stun threshold. Too little, and we will be on a trip to Chain Stun City, but too much, and we will not be stunned at all, meaning we have no recovery and would quickly lose our shield. We can manage this with our skill tree, as well as boots, so you may need to play around with what feels right for you. I sit in the middle, using an 8% threshold passive while keeping shield around 10,000. You can play with 0%. But certain ranged enemies with fast attacks can stun lock you. That's why our stun recovery is important, so that we may quickly attack and close the gap. Having back in action for our anointment helps massively with it. This leads us to attack speed. We need to be fast enough that we can at least attack once, before being stunned again. If we can't attack, we can't activate energy barrier, meaning we will lose our shield. So attack speed is very important, and we get a lot of it. Firstly, with the items, I have set up trade filters and shared them in the description below. I have set them on the very low end, for extreme budget cases, so if you have some orbs to splash then be sure to increase the values in the filter. Our staff on the second weapon set is one of our most important pieces, as it boosts Incinerate damage. Normally, any damage gained as extra would not increase Ignite damage. However, our Bringer of Flame Ascendancy allows all gained as extra damage to contribute, so any element will be helpful. We also want to have as much fire spell levels, fire damage, and spell damage as we can afford. Our helmet should have high energy shield, as well as our boots and focus. The Sceptre needs at least 140, or 200 spirit. Anything in between will not make a big difference. Gloves and belts should be used to cap our resistances, as well as attack speed for gloves, as this is a very big bonus and we need it for quality of life. Also on our belt, getting some strength helps us equip the Sceptre, and wear extra red support gems. The Amulet must have as many spell skills as possible, including some energy shield and any resistance we may still need. The focus would also benefit from spell skill levels, as well as energy shield, but also spell damage. We can get many corruptions on our rings, with all elemental resistance being helpful if you are only missing a few points, and more damage applying globally to all elements and types is a good option. In the speed version, with Zerphis, we also use Call of the Brotherhood, with as much skill speed as we can possibly get. If you make this yourself, don't forget the speed catalysts. The armors are fine clean, but some cheap corruptions like an extra socket can go a long way for us if we are struggling to cap our resistances with items. We can use runes instead. For example, my Gloamgown has 3 sockets, because it is much more cost effective and benefits the build in other ways. It is nice to have more recharge, but we are already at 15,000 without the extra 20% increase, meaning we would skyrocket to 18,000. If you have deep enough pockets, it is probably better so long as your other items are good as well. I have provided planners for Infernalist, although any witch or sorcerer could copy the skill tree exactly, and changes could be made to suit any class. If you want to ask any questions, feel free to, down below or in the Discord. Please also enjoy the written guide and trade links, to make setting up easier. Thanks for watching, and take care everyone. Here is our bonus section for this video. This was working in patch 0.1, and is still working in Dawn of the Hunt, patch 0.2. I don't think it is intended, but it has existed since the release of the game, so if you don't know already, this is how to make level 21 gems. First, apply any quality you would like. You don't have to if the skill you are upgrading doesn't need it. Secondly, we must add however many sockets we desire. If we use the skills in trigger setups like this one with cast on Ignite, we don't need any sockets. Lastly, we use Varl Orbs. Don't use Omens as they are not cost effective here. Keep an eye out for any 5 sockets, 23% quality, and the +1 level to skill gem corruption. This will work with any skill gem or spirit gem, and is best to use your lowest level gems which you don't need, because we will be able to upgrade the gem we get a corruption on. It may take a few tries, but is cheap and well worth it. If you don't get it, I would keep trying with this method instead of buying one, but it may not be the right option for you, depending on our luck. Once we have the corruption for +1 level, all we do is equip the gem, and get an uncut level 20 skill gem. Simply level up the corrupted gem to 20, and it will retain the +1 level bonus, making it level 21. See you in the next one.